Metro Weather Watch, evening update for the Evansville metro area and surrounding tri-state communities, with meteorologist Nathan Kitchens.
Good evening, everyone. This update is brought to you by Vinnie's Auto Detail. They have been serving the tri-state for over 17 years with high-quality window tinting and auto detailing at reasonable prices. Give Donnie a call at 471-4900 and are located at 950 North Congress in Evansville. Thought we'd start off by taking a look at our January stats. It's hard to believe the month of January is already over. We start the month of February tomorrow. Taking a look back at this month, it's been a pretty wild month temperature-wise, but the big story has been the warmth that has overpowered the cold weather that we had earlier this month. Now it's interesting, we look at the lowest temperature this month. We got down to 5 degrees on January 7th. We had a really cold stretch in early January. We had several days with temperatures and only in the upper teens and low 20s for highs. In fact, on the 5th or the 6th of the month, I should say, I think we had a high temperature of about 16 in Evansville. So we did have a pretty cold spell of weather there. You might forget that after how warm it's been, but we did have some cold weather in early January. But the warmth has overpowered this month. Really from the 7th on, it was very warm. And we had just very mild temperatures through the month. We had about a 2-week stretch with no freezes in the area. That's just incredible to think. We went 2 weeks with no temperatures that dropped out of below freezing for most of us, which is pretty amazing. And we hit 69 degrees on 2 occasions, on the 12th and the 21st. The snowfall department, you don't need me to tell you that we haven't had much snow. 0.4 is all we picked up in Evansville. So not even a half inch. Now I will say this, there were many areas, especially north of Evansville, that got 1 to 2 inches of snow early in the month. I believe on about the 4th of the month we had a system come through back in the early part of the month. Did produce a little bit of snow, but boy, that was not a big system. And this goes down as the 6th least snowiest January in Evansville. Just last January, we had one of the top, we were up there and towards the top of the snowiest January list on record last January, but not this year, that's for sure. We were running a little bit below in precipitation this month. It's interesting. Other areas, most of Indiana actually had well above normal precipitation. Here in far southwest Indiana, in our area, we had just a little bit less precipitation in areas to our east, with about 8/10 below normal. And the average temperature, averaging the highs and the lows, averaged out to about 40.1. That's typically about where our average highs are. That's about 7.6 degrees above average. That is a significant ways above normal. And this goes down as the 9th warmest January on record. So this was a very warm month. That's incredible to think, though. Think about this. We went from 5 degrees on the January 7th, and we still managed to have the 9th warmest January on record. That just goes to show you how warm we were through much of the middle and latter portion of this month. Here's our weather headlines for you over the next several days. We're going to see a lot of cloud cover tonight and tomorrow. Could see some sprinkles and maybe a couple flurries to our north. I'll talk about that here in a second, but not a big deal. Tomorrow we're just seeing a lot of cloud cover. It's going to be still fairly mild. I mean, really it's going to be pretty seasonable. Areas from across the north, about 44 in Vincennes to about 51 in Madisonville. It's kind of going to be the range tomorrow from north to south. And then we're going to turn colder here. We're kind of trending colder here Thursday through Saturday. We'll see highs mostly in the upper 30s, so we'll be much colder. And then we're going to see a warm-up coming in Sunday, and especially Monday and Tuesday of next week look very warm. We could get well into the 60s. I even think a 70 is possible, especially south of Evansville, around next Tuesday. We're going to have a very potent storm system off to our northwest. It's going to pump in a very warm air mass. It's going to give us a thunderstorm chances as well early next week. We'll have to watch that. And then we'll see a dramatic drop in temperatures by the middle and late portion of next week. And we'll have to watch that setup during that time, whether or not we could get any snow. If there's a second wave of low pressure that tries to develop along the frontal boundary, that can make things interesting for wind freeze prospects, but that's kind of a long shot. I'll talk about that here in a second. And also, I'll talk a little more about how February looks to shape up. It looks like a very transient pattern. I mentioned it looks like we'll see a cold spell later next week, but it looks like it's going to also be pretty brief, in and out. So we're cold for a couple days, and then it looks like we'll go right back to the milder temperatures again. I really think that's going to be a story for much of the rest of the month. I'll go back to that February outlook in just a minute, but let's talk about the weekend. We talked about that last night, but before I get there, we have a weak disturbance just to our north. Looks like showers will increase just north of the area, even areas like Vincennes, Indiana, out towards maybe Mount Vernon, Illinois. Could see a few sprinkles or tonight, but I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. And maybe a few flurries just north of our area there. Up in central Indiana, I could see a little bit of snow shower activity there along I-70 there in central Indiana tomorrow morning. And then that kind of moves off towards Cincinnati, Ohio, and far southern Ohio. through today, Wednesday, and we stay quiet here. The main story here is going to be the weekend. I already kind of mentioned how the rest of the week looks to unfold. So this is the GFS model going through the end of the week. Again, quiet weather on Friday, quiet for most of Saturday. We're going to have a high pressure over us. The high will begin to move off to the east. And once that high moves off to the east, we'll begin to get a southerly flow around that high. And it's going to pump in milder air. So we're going to start off Saturday really cold, but we'll start to see temperatures warming up as the precipitation begins to approach, move in, and develop over the area. So by the time we get to about 6 o'clock in the evening, we're starting to see some of that precipitation break out just to our west, there across portions of extreme western Illinois and Missouri. And then by midnight, it's all on top of us here. So it looks like Saturday evening is when this is all going to start coming in. And we're going to have to watch this because temperatures will be critical here. This is going to be one of those events where we have a marginally cold air mass in place initially, but we're going to be warming up throughout the event. And initially, we're going to have to watch temperatures closely as I still think the chances there, especially areas just north of Evansville, north and northeast of Evansville, to see a quick burst of snow, some sleet, before we would warming up to get plain rain. And I think it'd be possible we could see some quick light accumulations in our northern counties Saturday evening and Saturday night before we warm up and just eventually turn to rain. And the thing is, even with this potential burst of some wintry weather across mainly our north and northeast counties, we would generally warm up to just see plain rain late Saturday night and by Sunday by all means, because we're going to see temperatures in the mid-40s Sunday. So there's no question Sunday that we would see, if we would see any winter weather, because we're clearly just going to be rain by then. But the GFS model, actually, and I'm showing you here, you're like, what are you talking about? It's showing just rain, and you're right. It's actually suggesting by the time the precipitation gets here, we're already warm enough that we have no wintry issues. So, GFS might be a little warm. The other models are a little bit colder than this. So I still think the chances there, especially north of I-64, I would say, for a quick burst of some light wintry precipitation Saturday evening. But it looks like that would be a very short window. And because we're going to have a nice southerly flow coming in, and we know what usually happens in these setups, the warmer winds out, but I'm just trying to be cautious, in case the cold air that takes a little bit longer to get out. We'll keep an eye on that. Looking at the Canadian model here, let me go back here. The Canadian model, it's very similar. It's just a little bit colder, though, and it's a little closer to my thinking. So Saturday night, we see in the evening, so between about 6 o'clock and midnight, the precipitation starts surging in, developing over the area. You start to see this pink. So that could indicate some sleet initially coming down. I don't really foresee much freezing rain because temperatures will probably be at or above freezing by then. And then going through Saturday night, it is still picking up on a band of some wintry mixed precipitation here, kind of along I-64, especially to our east, early Sunday, late Saturday night. And then by Sunday, most of the precipitation is starting to drop off to our south, and it's just rain by then as temperatures will be warming up into the lower to mid-40s Sunday afternoon. And we'll look at temperatures here, what the model is showing for this time frame, because it's all about the temperatures too. See, we're going to have a cold air mass in place initially. This is by Saturday morning. Look at temperatures in the teens. I think this is a little bit too cold. The Canadian model has kind of a cold bias, so it's probably a little bit overdone. But you get the general idea. We're going to be warming up gradually later on Saturday afternoon. And by Saturday evening, we're at 34 degrees on the model at 6 o'clock. And that's when things are going to start being critical. From about 6 o'clock to midnight, temperatures will be critical here. So 34 at 6 p.m., 32 by midnight. So there will be that window here from along the northeast of Evansville, perhaps a mixed bag of wintry weather for a short duration before it would go over to all rain. Because look at temperatures by Sunday afternoon, 50 starting to surge into the area. So there's no doubt about it that the window of any mixed wintry weather looks to be short-lived. And honestly, when we get a south flow like this coming in, usually the warm air wins out. And I think it's possible that we don't have any winter concerns at all in our area, that it could be more like central Indiana that sees a little bit of wintry weather. But this is just not an impressive setup. I don't really foresee it being much of any issues for our area, but just something we'll have to keep an eye on for Saturday evening. But for the most part, it's just going to be a rain event for us, and even that, we're just not looking at a major system here at all. I think the main focus needs to be next week. Let me talk about that here. So there's that weak system this weekend, again, moving through late Saturday night, early Sunday. We're kind of dry through Sunday night into Monday. We start to see some rain showers break out Monday. We're going to be at a strong southerly flow, so we're going to see temperatures continuing to warm up. I think Monday we could hit the upper 50s for highs later on in the day, so we're going to see a nice rebound in these temperatures. And then we're going to be very warm Monday night, windy, showers increasing over the area. we're going to see a strong area of low pressure developing to our west over the plain states, and that begins to move our way Tuesday. Look how the pressure gradient tightens up over the area. We're going to see some strong winds. Could see some thunderstorms as well, along with temperatures that could flirt with, I think, 70 in parts of our area, especially the southeast part of our area, as you get firmly to the warm sector of the system. And then that system will move through Tuesday night and a Wednesday. You see the showers and thunderstorms. And what we're going to have to watch during this time frame, some of the models, there's been hints that we get a second wave of low pressure to develop along that frontal boundary as the cold air is beginning to march into the area, potentially another round of low pressure to right up along that front. That can make things a little bit more interesting for winter weather prospects. Every now and then we get these setups that develop here where we get, a main area of low pressure to move through, get a trailing front. Sometimes you'll get a secondary low that tries to develop along that and move off to the northeast and riding up along the edge of the cold air. And in those setups, you can get some interesting weather in the Ohio Valley. But I think the more likely scenario would be to not see any snow at all, hardly. But there is that chance that if a second wave gets going and develops and it's just right, we could get a snow system. But this is just so far out, there's just not much confidence at all during this time frame. What we do know, what we have higher confidence in, is that we're going to see mild temperatures and thunderstorm chances on Tuesday, and then turning at some point around Wednesday into Thursday, turning sharply colder, and I mean sharply colder. It's going to be pretty cold mid to late part of next week. I mean, we're going to see highs back into the 30s by all means. Maybe a snow chance, maybe not. We'll just have to see. But I think that potential is on the table. It might be a long shot, but I do think the chance is on the table, so we'll keep an eye on that later next week. But again, as I mentioned, the cold weather will be short-lived. I think we're going to quickly see the warm air fight back in. Going longer term, beyond about 10 days from now, it's looking like overall mild temperatures are going to kind of win out in our pattern. And looking at the February outlook, they've updated the February outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, and they've actually trended warmer, which is no surprise. I tell you what, winter is running out of time, but if we're going to see a period where winter weather tries to get sustained and locked in, honestly, I just don't see that, and we are running out of time. So it looks like from here on out, while we can't take the snow chances off the table, I mentioned next week we'll watch that setup to see if anything can try to develop there, if we get a secondary low to develop along that front. But overall, the chances of a prolonged stretch of wintry weather, it's just not looking very likely for the month of February. And obviously, once we go beyond this, we're just running out of time. So I tell you what, if you're ready for some, an early spring, there's some prospects that mid to late February could certainly skew pretty mild in our region. That's something we'll have to watch as we get closer. And then precipitation for the month, near normal to maybe edging a little bit above normal just to our northeast across the area. But that'll wrap up your evening update. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great night.